So tonight we're starting a new series. It's going to be on the games of the GIPF Project. As you can see from the beginning shot of the video, this game is about the first game in the series, the game GIPF itself. This is a series of abstract strategy games by Chris Berm, a European designer. And the interesting thing about the project is that all of the games can contribute pieces and actions to this game. Now, each of the games is playable by itself, and they play just fine as single abstract strategy games. But the ability to add some of the functionality of the other games into the core game of GIPF is quite interesting. So those things are called potentials. And the interesting thing about them is that as I'm playing GIPF, for example, if I decide I want to use one of the other game's potentials in my game of GIPF, I then have to stop playing GIPF briefly, go and play a game of the other game, whatever one I happen to be trying to use, and if I win that game, I can continue and use the potential for that game here in GIPF. If I lose the game, then I have to come up with something else because I can't use that potential. So most people don't tend to play with the potentials for casual home use. They usually just play one game as one game. But in tournaments, the use of potentials can be interesting. And it can make the series of games obviously fairly long, although each game plays in well under an hour. So anyway, this is GIPF, and GIPF uses a pushing mechanic. And we'll see how it works here basically in a minute. So you can see the initial setup is to put a stack of two pieces. You can see there are two pieces there. So each player has three of those stacks of two pieces, and those are called the GIPF pieces. And they start out on the angles of this hexagon, and they start on the thick dots on the outside of the board. And then white begins and pushes one of his sets of pieces onto the board. And then black would do the same thing. And you might ask yourself, well, this looks kind of silly. Couldn't I just start with all these pieces set up here on the corners of the hexagon? And yes, you could. I think they do this mainly to get people used to the pushing mechanic. Because once the GIPF pieces have been moved onto the board, then the gameplay starts. So white comes over to their reserve, and they take one piece, and they put it on any one of those black dots that they want. Say white puts it here, and then they push onto the board, and anything that's in front of them gets pushed along. Now the goal of the game is to get at least four in a row. If you do, you can take those four pieces off and put them back in your reserve. If the piece is a doubled piece, like this GIPF piece, I can choose to take it off or not. Usually you would leave your own on the board and take off your opponent's. Because if at any time you have none of these doubled pieces on the board, you lose. The other way you can lose is by not having any move to make. And usually that will happen when your reserve runs out. So you always want to be making sure you have an option to take some pieces off the board by lining four up in a row to put them back in your reserve. All right, so now it would be black's turn. So black would go over and take a piece from his reserve. And maybe he decides he's going to push white this way. So he goes here, and he pushes white in that direction. All right, now white would look. And maybe he doesn't like the fact that black is kind of working on getting 4 in a row there, so he's going to perhaps push the black piece out of line. Of course, that pushes his pieces out of line too, but it does give him 2 whites in a row right here. All right, so now it would be black's turn again. This time, black is say he's going to push his own pieces up. So he moves like that. So white decides to push black to the center down here. So he starts over here and he pushes towards the middle. Now you can see white is in good shape here to push another white in here and claim 4 pieces back. Now it's not that white is low. He's still got plenty in his reserve. So he might choose not to do that. But if he did, he would gain those 4 pieces back. All right, so let's see. Black, if he doesn't want white to do that, maybe black plays here and pushes this way. All right, so now, even though he's done that, he has given white the perfect opportunity here. So if white decided he wanted to, he would play here, push. And now white has 4 in a row, so those pieces come off. Now the single pieces you must take off. The double GIPF piece you can take off, but white would obviously probably want to leave that on the board. So white has now built up his reserve stack. And you can see black is starting to get a little low, so he's going to want to do the same. So black might take and play here, and then push up for 4, and also take off 3. All right, so now it would be white's turn again. Let's say white's just going to push a piece onto the board by itself, just like that. And gameplay would continue in that way. Now, one of the other things that's critical to note, and I'll set this up here rather than try to play it out. Let's say we end up with a situation that looks like this. All right. So as you can see, white has 4 pieces in a row. Black has his doubled piece at the end here. And when white has 4 pieces in a row, he can take off all of his 4 pieces. In fact, he must take off the 2 single ones. He would probably leave his 2 double ones, but then he also gets to take off and capture the black double. So this would be really bad for black, because black would lose these 2 pieces. They're out of the game. White would claim these 2 back to his reserve. And now black only has 2 GIPF pieces on the board, so he's in more danger of losing. So the basic rule is anytime you have 4 in a row, if there are other enemy pieces in that row, and they must be contiguous. They can't. You can't skip over an empty space. But if they are contiguous, you can capture them. So let's just set that up briefly again here. And let's say instead of what we had before, it looked like this. All right, so here you can see there's a blank spot right there. So even though white has 4 in a row, he cannot capture the black playing piece in that case. He would just take off his 2 pieces as he would normally. So any blanks stops the ability to capture. And that is the rule set for GIPF. It's very simple. One of those games that's deceptively simple to learn, but really, really difficult to master. There's a lot of strategic depth here, a lot of tactical thinking that has to go on about how to put your opponent in danger while keeping out of danger yourself. And one of the games that I really enjoy. To my mind, there's not a bad game in any of the GIPF series. So this is GIPF Project number 1. Next up, we'll take a look at GIPF Project number 2. And we'll have an interesting story about that because over the design life of the series, the game that occupies GIPF position number 2 has changed. and we'll talk about what the original game looked like, what the replacement looked like, and maybe why I think they might have done it and changed out the game sort of in the middle of the run. So anyway, it comes right down to it. That is GIPF Project number 1. So I won't play the game out. I think you understand now how it works. And hopefully you've enjoyed this little overview. And look forward to the next one in the series when we review GIPF Project game number 2. All right, have a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed.